What would you do if you were trapped on an abandoned spaceship with only 4 other human beings and a near infinite supply of mouthwash to keep you company? Would you succumb to the isolation, your addictions, your anxieties, your psychopathic tendencies that we all definitely have? These are the questions I asked myself while playing through Mouthwashing, a 1-year-old sci-fi psychological horror video game with retro PS1 style graphics, which essentially means it was made specifically for me. And somewhat upsettingly, I found it pretty easy to relate to each of the 5 uniquely damaged characters' worst traits. So that's what I'm talking about in this video. Before we get into it, if that sounds even vaguely interesting to you, then stop watching this video, go play the game, and then come back and watch. Mouthwashing is cheap, short, and you will have the best experience knowing as little about it as possible before playing. So go do that right now. If you have already played it, or if you just don't care about spoilers or will never play it, then what is mouthwashing? Briefly, mouthwashing takes place on a long-haul cargo spaceship with a small 5-person crew, working for the Pony Express delivery service. You start the game by crashing the ship, and the story then jumps non-linearly between the days leading up to the crash and the months following, where we learn more about these characters, their jobs, their flaws, strengths, and relationships to each other, and of course, their underlying psychological trauma that contributes to almost everyone on the ship dying horrifically and or descending into deranged psychotic madness. Most players probably won't sit there watching the credits at the end of the game and think, man, I could literally be any one of these characters in their worst moments. Or, damn, I could really thrive in this environment. Or, I could really go for some mouthwash right about now. I am not most people. I am special. Not really, but I am broken because I am just like Anya. The main threat that the crew of the Tulpa face is isolation. But me? I love being alone. Like Anya, the ship's medical officer, I'm pretty quiet, reserved, keep to myself, and isolation tends to be my preferred existence. Is this because I'm comfortable being on my own, or because my social anxiety makes me extremely uncomfortable when I'm not alone? You decide. Anya lacks self-confidence. Despite being the medic, she hates feeding the mutilated captain his painkillers, so constantly asks someone else to shoulder that burden. And I can relate. The ever-present fear of failure while being locked up in this small space with 4 other people would drive me crazy. Fucking something up and having everyone else know about it without being able to escape them? Nightmare. So I too would try to pawn off the things that I'm supposed to do to avoid the possibility of screwing up in the first place. Anya's lack of self-confidence leads to a self-defeating mentality, thinking of herself as incapable, not good enough, giving up before she's even tried because she could and probably will fail anyway. For me, this familiar mindset manifests as an intense desire to keep everyone around me happy and liking me. To ensure this, I'd probably stop doing anything because it's easier than trying and failing. I'd drive myself into a paralysis of sorts. It's a fine balancing act, staying quiet and reserved and keeping people liking me without ever actually doing anything for anyone. Of course, sometimes my overt people-pleasing nature would get the better of me, and in those cases, I am just like Daisuke. Daisuke lacks direction in life. He joins the Pony Express crew as the mechanic's intern simply because he doesn't know what else to do with himself. And I get it. I can see myself signing up to some failing spaceship delivery company without any experience or real desire because it's something. As the youngest crew member, he's also a little naive and eager to please. Sound familiar? Doing everything you can to prove to your team that you're capable, even if that's not entirely true, especially if it means keeping them liking you, is once again an aspect of my own personality that I am all too aware of. Daisuke's intentions are well-meaning, but this desire to do the best he can eventually leads to his downfall. His earnestness results in him being easily manipulated into putting himself in harm's way, which ultimately ends in his brutal death. And the people pleaser in me would also 100% do something like this without thinking of the consequences if it meant that my small crew would continue to like and respect me, because that is the most important thing. There are, of course, facets to Daisuke that I can't even fathom relating to, like having rich parents as a backup plan, or remaining pretty chipper and positive despite hopeless circumstances, because really, I am just like Swansea. Swansea is the oldest crew member, the mechanic, and a cynical bastard. He's the first to offer negativity. He almost always sees the worst, and he hates having a young intern that highlights all his own flaws. In this scenario, I would also immediately fill the role of the pessimistic, negative cynic, because that's what I already do in every scenario in real life. Swansea is also the most jaded of the crew, having nothing nice to say about his job, the company, his crew, mostly, or the almighty capitalist machine. As someone who works in a similar trade, if I ever make it to his age, about to retire, and get trapped on my last job, I too would probably do exactly what he does. Use my cynicism as fuel to get absolutely wasted for months on end. When the crew of the Tulpa realise their final delivery is a near infinite supply of mouthwash, which has a conveniently significant ethanol content, Swansea is the first to take advantage of this by breaking his years-long sobriety to get smashed. Now, I'm not a full-blown alcoholic or anything, but let me tell you, with increasingly fewer ways to pass the days, weeks, and months, I too would pretty quickly end up like this. Getting drunk off mouthwash with a group of buddies for the foreseeable future. These are ideal conditions. And I don't have a drinking problem, I swear. Just ask my sponsor. While Swansea's attitude is maybe the most realistically relatable, my people-pleasing would still force me to be useful sometimes. In which case, I am just like Curly. Curly is the captain of the Tulpa. He's probably the character in this scenario I most wish I could be, but in reality is probably the least relatable. As the level-headed, charismatic leader, he's always on everyone's side, puts his crew's needs first, and stays rational and responsible under pressure. I wonder what that's like. Something I do have in common with Curly is the consistency of good relationships with his crew. For him, it's a result of his natural leader instincts, while for me, maintaining good relationships is born out of extreme social anxiety and obsessive people-pleasing. If I was on the Tulpa, I would try to get everyone on my side, because knowing I'd be trapped in an abandoned spaceship for months with even one person not liking me would be literal hell. Curly is also very responsible, another sign of a noble leader, taking the blame or burden from others even when it isn't required. I too tend to take responsibility for things, even if I'm not to blame. Except for me, it's because I fault myself for everything, and again would rather feel shit about myself than have someone else harbour shit feelings towards me. Anyway, Curly is a great guy, but he does also end up like this. So maybe it's good that I'm not super similar to him. Clearly, this is where responsibility and noble leadership gets you, everybody. Take notes. So really, I am just like Jimmy. Alright, here we go. Jimmy is the main player character whose descent into total psychotic madness we witness firsthand. There's no denying that Jimmy has ambition. He wants to move up in the world, has big dreams about his future, but he takes no responsibility for these ambitions by ever doing anything about it. Watch any of my recent videos to see how this might possibly relate to me. Once Curly is out of the picture, Jimmy takes on the leader role because of his ambition. The problem is, no one else really agrees to this. He hasn't really earned it, and instead of proving to his crew that he's a good leader through his actions, he attempts to manipulate them into thinking it instead. Again, very irresponsible. Now, I'm not a manipulative person, but I can see myself taking a leadership position if no one else wanted to, because being responsible and helpful might make everyone like me. And again, that is the most important thing. Would I go as completely insane as Jimmy? Descend into full-blown psychopathic madness to achieve this goal of pleasing everyone? With enough isolation, time, and mouthwash? Probably, yeah. If there's one thing I really have in common with Jimmy, it's demons. And in this kind of scenario, my demons would probably also manifest as an invisible horse monster, or force-feeding a man his own leg meat, or whatever this thing is screaming through the vents. Would I really go as crazy as Jimmy? I mean, who can say? I like to think that I wouldn't, but never know until you're in it for real. Here's hoping. So, putting all this together, I suppose the lesson here is that a cynical, socially anxious, reserved, people-pleasing alcoholic who wants to do right by everyone, but only because the idea of someone not liking me is a literal waking nightmare, is probably not a great crew member to have on your abandoned spaceship. I can easily imagine having the same fate as each of these characters, because I really would be some miserable combination of each of these crew members' worst traits. Best case scenario, I'd end up the last person alive and could drink myself to death on mouthwash and social anxiety. Not too far off real life, huh? So what did we learn from this game and this video? That I have social anxiety and people-pleasing problems? Already knew that. That no one should ever be stuck in a small space with me for any prolonged amount of time? Seems obvious that these kinds of psychological horror games, while my favourite blend of sci-fi and fucked up story, probably aren't super healthy for me to engage with. I disagree. If you haven't played Mouthwashing and ignored my initial spoiler warning, I hope at least all of this convinced you to give it a go. Leave a comment and tell me what you would do in this situation, which crew member you most relate to, or which brand of mouthwash you use every morning to responsibly quash your anxieties. If you liked this video, prove it by pressing the button and subscribe to see more invaluable, worthwhile content like this. Goodbye.